Hello, hello, hello. I believe we are live. It is January the 13th, 2021. And I am so delighted to be here on this special day. I think every day is a special day. At least I often feel that way. And I want to be really honest as people are starting to join the call today. This wasn't easy today. I don't know if anybody else is feeling the what's happening south of the border. I live in Canada, and there's some talks going on right now in the United States. And I am not going to get political. I am not going to share my views on what's been happening, but I do want to be present to it and just acknowledge perhaps what a lot of times we don't feel that it's maybe appropriate to, or that it's professional to, or authentic to. And that is, as I was preparing for today, which I do have a topic that I'm going to share to support the heart-centered entrepreneurs in this group. Hello, Vicki. Oh, so wonderful to see you here. Oh my gosh, she's one of our angels that is in our community. Vicki does incredible work. So blessed to see you here, Vicki. And I do have some content. I do want to talk about a particular thing that I've noticed in, I wouldn't even say lately, I would say that it's been over the 10 or many years that I've been an entrepreneur that has come to even more of a light. There's been even more light shone on this one thing of many things that holds many entrepreneurs back, especially in the space that I'm in and that many of you who are listening are in, which is that micropreneur, heart-centered, and working to provide others with often personal skills to be able to be more peaceful and loving just in everyday life. So what a lot of people and entrepreneurs in this community are doing is aligned with that bigger vision for a more peaceful, joyful, loving world. And we're not experiencing that entirely. So I just want to share with you that sometimes we do these things as I made a promise. Let me tell you, I was thinking, is there any way I can back out of this talk today and talk about something else? But I promised to be here, and I'm waiting for some other people that I know had expressed interest to join me and Vicki and a few others that are here. So I'm going to have a sip of water, as I do have a lot of content. I actually have notes today I'm going to be following. A lot of these lives are not something that are necessarily, perfectly put together, all buttoned down, the way maybe a training would be. It's much more speaking from the heart. And so I'll get right into talking about what I want to share today in the Insights for Heart-Centered Entrepreneurs. And by the way, I want to mention something about this title, about heart-centered entrepreneurs. I believe everybody can be heart-centered, and everybody is born being heart-centered. And I believe that every human has it in their heart to be loving and kind and compassionate. So that's the place that I come from. That's the place that I aspire to be. And so, but why I frame the community here as heart-centered is that the work that we're doing comes from the heart, yes, and it's also for the betterment of the lives of others. And so it instantly, if you will, impacts the lives of others. So everything that a heart-centered entrepreneur does is what I'm doing how is what I'm going to do impact other people? So it's very much a heart-based decision about every action that we take. Everything in business about designing our programs, coaching services, training programs, retreats, and all the beautiful things that people are doing in this space of transformational change work. And from the place of what impact is it having on others, and it impacts the decision on pricing and on timing and there's so much uncertainty right now. So our many communities, many entrepreneurs, and I would say everyone in the planet has been affected. Because I'm in the space of entrepreneurship, that's the space that I speak from. So my topic is, hello, hi there. Yes, thank you. I really do appreciate you being here. And I do love sharing, having been an entrepreneur for now over going on to my 13th year. I realized that one of the roles that I can play is to support other entrepreneurs and, guide the way. When that path is already carved, it makes someone else's journey that much easier. And it's not about hand-holding necessarily, but it's just sharing the wisdom of what I've learned over those years. And so one of the things that I've noticed lately is that, and maybe I can ask it as a question. Have you, and maybe you can put the answer here in the comment box, those of you that are listening, are you in the process of, or have you set an intention to create a larger program of offerings, which would be a multi-layered, bigger program that would include various trainings, one-on-one coaching, one-to-many, like a group coaching, perhaps a mastermind. It could have weekly meditations, and it could have a online retreat. Now we're doing everything online. So, but are you in the process now of creating something that's layered, that has many facets to it, and you're struggling with two things? And that is that you're not completing this bigger program. There's so many pieces to it. It's become quite complex. And yes, Vicki, your program for trauma survivors the time is right for that sort of work right now. So thank you for sharing that. And you're finding that you're not completing, that you're working on many different things at once. And it's depleting your ability to stay really focused and really disciplined. And you tend to go into, entrepreneurs tend to go into a cycle, a loop of getting stuck and not completing and not exiting this cycle. So in the field of NLP, we have various models that we follow, and NLP is a very process-based field of study. And so for many of you that have followed NLP, taken NLP training, you know that's many, many processes in the field that have step-by-step approaches to achieving a particular outcome, which is great. But then the new code of NLP has what's called a modeling process that I would say is at a higher level than perhaps the TOPE model, than some of you may be familiar with. And why I'm bringing this up, this aspect of having a model, is that what I've discovered is that when entrepreneurs are creating these programs, multi-programs at once, and getting perhaps confused, a little overwhelmed, not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, what's missing often is that they don't have a model that brings them from the beginning strategy of starting to an exit point. If you don't have a plan to exit a model, you're going to stay looping within it. So let me give you an example of the new code model. Yes, Vicki, this is a common problem. Absolutely. So the model in the new code of NLP has 5 steps. It's very simple, and I'll go through these, and then I'll give you some examples of what I mean in terms of what stops entrepreneurs in getting to that part where they exit, and then they can start something else. And what is it that they're layering in and not completing one thing and sort of floating around between doing many different things at once, which can lead to overwhelm. So the first step in a modeling phase is the preparation. And this preparation stage is about deciding what you're going to do, basically, and finding a model for excellence, and identifying, what is it that you want to learn in that first stage. So this is where many of us have come through some sort of training programs, and we have ourselves had an incredible shift, an amazing release, perhaps of an unhealed trauma from the past, or a pattern of behavior that we've been holding on to for many years. And that particular training course and that particular mentor or trainer or coach, something happened in that experience that was open up the floodgates, helped you release the trauma that you've been dealing with. For example, like for trauma survivors like Vicki is talking about, right? So we ourselves often in this space have dealt with traumas. So we have that incredible experience, and we make a decision that we want to share that with others and impact others, because we think about how long and hard we've been looking for that shift ourselves. And we think, well, if I would have had this, this methodology or met this particular trainer back when I was dealing with my trauma, 10, 20, even 30 years ago, how different my life would have been. I hope this is making sense. So at that point, we have the initial model is that experience that we go through. Then what we do is and I have some notes here I'm going to refer to. At that stage, we then go into a place of curiosity and start applying it, practicing it ourselves. Before we put it out there into the world, we practice it for ourselves. And two questions come up in that step is, does this really work for me? Because I had the experience in the training or with the coach or in the mastermind or in the retreat, and it was incredible. But what about outside that experience? What about when I go home? What about when I go back to my own life? Will that still work for me? So there's a question that happens before we take the next step is testing it out, practicing it, ensuring that, this actually does work. And that was my experience with NLP. Then the next question is around, how does this work for me? What is the structure of it? And how can I articulate that? How can I put that down in a step-by-step process, taking the model from the person that we modeled and adding in who we are into it to create something bespoke, right? To create something new so that we're not just regurgitating somebody else's practice or somebody else's model, right? And because there's rules around that. Now, in the field I am in, and being a trainer of NLP, I have the authority of the co-creator of NLP, John Grinder, to do exactly that, because we are in an agreement so that I can teach NLP in an ecological and ethical way with his permission. So that's a little bit different. But since I've taken my NLP training, I have designed my own practices for myself. So I've taken all that knowledge, I've put it into place in my own life and figured out, does it work for me? What doesn't, work for me? And how does it work for me? And then, kind of put together a code, a step-by-step of how do I use it, right? I hope this is making sense. That makes sense. Yes, Vicki. So at that point, what happens in the modeling phase is so you have the preparation, which is finding the model of excellence and having that first experience. The second stage is literally modeling what you've learned and putting into place and practicing it. And then the third stage is like a test, another kind of the first is like a test. Does this work for me? How does this work for me? And then putting it in patterning that kind of is bespoke, that's unique to each human, each entrepreneur in this case. And then the fourth step is, third and fourth, is testing it. And how this works is, does what I've learned that works for me work for others the same way or even better? And that only happens through testing it out and trying it with other people. And so there's where some more practice now outside of oneself, working with others. And then the final stage is with the evidence of success, that it works for other people too through some testing. It is a matter of then exiting the sequence and teaching it formally versus practicing it with others. So again, we have find the model of excellence and have that experience for ourselves first. Secondly is the first step, is finding the model. So making the decision to go into, say, a coaching session or a training session. So deciding is step one. Step two is then the actual modeling of that coach, that trainer, that meditation teacher, whoever it is, and embodying their practices inside you to see, do they work, right? Then the third stage is applying to self, and does this work for me, and how does it work for me, leads into the next stage, which is refining the steps and coding it and putting it into a step-by-step that works. But that's unique from the first experience. And then the fifth step is chunking it into steps, like I said, but also teaching it to others in a formal way. And this is the step that a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck at. Now, there's a few reasons that I've discovered that happens. Why they don't exit. Why do the entrepreneurs, a lot of entrepreneurs that I know, get to that fourth step and they've gone through the experience, they've tested it out, they've practiced it, they've put it into a code, like a step-by-step, they've practiced it with now others, they have some evidence it works, but they don't exit. They don't take that next step of formally applying it and formally teaching it in a business sense, because an entrepreneur is a business person. What they do instead is, after stage 4, they go back to stage 1 and they start creating something else. Is this resonating? They start looking at that desire to have a bigger program, perhaps, is one of the reasons, and thinking, well, that's okay. That's pretty good. I have some evidence that works for me. And in my inner circle, they have given me some feedback. And so what else can I add to my bigger program? And they start the cycle over again. Now, what happens, that two things I want to talk about that happens during this process of layering in various products and services and programs and workshops and whatever to create this bigger program, is the first program or model that's created starts to get stale. It's sitting on the shelf. It's on the computer. It's in a notebook or in a PowerPoint presentation. And it starts to get stale and it starts to get forgotten. And because the entrepreneur is working on something new and exciting, another product, right? So that's exciting and it's safe. Okay, so that's one of the reasons, and that gets layered, and then they add on another one and another one. There is some testing that goes on in the middle that kind of is a little bit of I don't know if there's a name for it, but it kind of fools entrepreneurs into thinking that they've got enough evidence it works through that small group testing, that beta test with a small handful of people, but it's not the true test in the real world. So, so they keep layering it on. So this creates overwhelm, by the way, in case you haven't had this experience, you can relate to what it could create. So here's what I've discovered some of the problems on what's missing is, first of all, these are in random order. So one of them is having the ability to master, and I use the word master a lot, as we're really seeking mastery in specific things all through our whole life. Whether you're cooking a meal for the family, cleaning your house or decorating your home, whether you're getting yourself ready, but always getting yourself ready to go out, doing your hair, whatever. We're always seeking a level of mastery. We're always seeking as humans to evolve into being a better self. So that's no different in business. But what a lot of entrepreneurs miss in terms of the importance of mastering are two particular states that I've discovered. And I discovered these for myself, by the way. I took several years to figure out what is it, what sense of being, what states, if you will, those are words that we definitely use in NLP, are the one that if I had that, I would be able to exit doing what I'm working on. And I couldn't pick, there's two that came up, and I wasn't able to determine one as being higher, say, on a hierarchy than the other. So I put them together. And they are discipline and focus. And when you look at any person who's succeeded at a really high level, I like to look at athletes as an example. Those gold medal winners have a lot of discipline, and they can be very focused. So with entrepreneurs who don't get to that stage of exiting and putting their programs and services out to the real world in a big way, is because they haven't, so this is one, is that they haven't developed the ability to master the states of being focused and disciplined long enough to accumulate the evidence that the program will work in the real world. So they have some focus and discipline through the modeling process, but not enough to get past the last step of exiting the model so they can get out there and start applying it. The second problem I notice, or block, if you will, is in terms of not exiting the strategy or the model, is due to having some deep unconscious fears, often, again, due to the early trauma that is around beliefs about self-worth. So it can be about self-worth. It can be around, which ties in very much to abundance. And so these two kind of go hand in hand. And if that initial work didn't deal with those unhealed traumas around self-worth and about deserving, if you will, and abundance, and also, there's a fear that really was so surprising to me when I started as a coach, that there were so many people at that time, not so much now, but I sense that it still may be lingering, a fear of, I don't know if there's a name for it, where it's like a competition, a fear of competition. And if you are in the space of abundance, then competition doesn't enter into your psyche. It's just not even part of, I don't think about competition. I look at opportunities and collaborating and how can we spread this? Because the intention is so much more higher than any monetary attachment to what I'm doing. So the abundance piece, if that's not firmly anchored in and even embodied is the word that I would use, that is another reason why entrepreneurs don't exit the strategy. And the third one that I've noticed is ambiguity. It's, I don't really know what's going to happen out there when I do want to try promoting or selling my programs? Will people want to buy them? Because that's a whole different set of practices that need to happen, right? You get out of the creation period of creating a product or a meditation class or a coaching program or whatever you're working on. That's one whole set of processes. Then when you do exit that and you do get out and want to then share it with the greater community, you have to start a whole new process of marketing, selling it, producing it, delivering it. And there's, for especially newer entrepreneurs who may have some experience, but not a lot, and I would even say for myself, there's always a level of ambiguity. No one knows what's going to happen when it gets out there into the world. And so one of the qualities that supports a lot of entrepreneurs is being okay with that, being okay with the unknown. But in my opinion and in my experience, the only way that I can be okay with that ambiguity is that those first 4 steps have been robustly followed, that I chose that model from the best. So for example, when I took my NLP training, I looked for 6 months to find who was going to be my mentor, who was going to be the trainer that I was going to follow, because I understood the deep dive I was going to be taking in that experience. I had a little bit of experience before I started my NLP training. So I looked at who was out there and who did I want to model very carefully, very, very carefully. And I chose the NLP Academy in England, which I went, every year, sometimes twice a year, over 7, I think 8 years, to take my trainings, continue my trainings, and deepen my learnings, and do my very best to master NLP, this vast field of NLP, as best I could. And then I applied it to myself for another year before I even began coaching people. Then I did a small group of coaching. Much of it was pro bono. And when I did begin charging, I charged a fee that I felt was appropriate for my skill level, not what other people were charging, not what other people were telling me to charge. I went with my heart, and I went with a pricing based on my experience that I felt was fair, and it worked. And then every year, of course, I increased my prices as I get more proficient in what I do as a coach. So every model, every program that I've developed, I don't put it out there into the world until I know it works for me. I know that it works for a small group, and then I've got the evidence of success through the testimonies and comments from people. And if it doesn't have, then I cycle back. I cycle back to that stage of perhaps even finding another model, another person who's in that same area. For example, sales is a program that I'm developed and launched last year. And of course, I've been in sales for 30 years, but sales have changed. And so I applied some of the NLP training I already had. And I also, did some more learning and upped my skills before I created this new program and before I launched it. So when we do that work in that modeling process, then exiting is easier. We feel confident about the program that we're offering. There's going to be a level of ambiguity, and there's a way to anchor in, by the way, a very embodied, receptive, grounded state of ambiguity being okay. It's along the lines of saying, I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. You can embody that and then enter into that space of the next model for marketing it and selling it, etc., with confidence, right? So there are some qualities around this model that I wanted to just address, because ultimate intention for doing these lives and for the Expand Your Influence event, and this is going to be on YouTube as well, is to support entrepreneurs as best I can. It's always been my mission, and it's just becoming even more powerful for me that, do I know everything? No. Do I know a lot? Yes. Why would I hold on to that any longer? You know, I'm at the stage of my life where I am on a mission to help entrepreneurs who are serious about their business, who want to make a significant positive difference in the world, earn the income that they can live on so they can do that full time, and move out of perhaps a career that they're not thriving in. They may like it or they might hate it, and they want to really move into this space of stepping into their passion and for their own well-being, because there's something about holding back if you're not actually doing the work that you feel, I don't know if being called to do it is the right language, but around, there's a deep knowing that this is something that I know I can do well. I know it works for me. I've tested it with others. I've seen the results and how it's helping other people heal, be more healthy and well, mentally and physically and emotionally, spiritually, whatever words you want to use about just being a healthy, well human. And there's a intention that seems to bubble up from that this is where I want to go with this, and this is how I can make an impact in the world in this short life I have. And so those are the entrepreneurs that I really want to touch and reach out to and share this with. Now I'm just going to check my time. So I have a couple minutes. I want to talk about a few other things I have on my notes. So it's really important that there's there's two things that I could sum this up with, by the way, because one thing is about the way our brains work is our brains love patterns. Our brains are designed to actually create patterns, repeat patterns, and let them sink into the unconscious. Basically, that's how we learn to do anything in life, is through repetition and whatever. But our unconscious is not very good at determining whether the pattern that we're running is one that's ecological, good for us, good for others, that is in alignment with our outcomes that we're desiring, that is congruent with our languaging, that is going to lead us in the direction of our biggest intention. The unconscious is not very good about doing that. So what happens with entrepreneurs in as well, so this is maybe an easier way to sum this up as we end this call, is in the creative process, there's two stages. There's input and then there's output. So again, we're just going to summarize this whole concept, this model for content creation really is what we're talking about. The input is the curiosity, looking for something to improve one's life, learning from hopefully a model of excellence who exemplifies what you're wanting, by the way. If you're ever looking for a leader, a teacher, a guide, a mentor, a coach, whatever you want to call this person that you're looking to learn something from, take your time to pick someone who exemplifies whatever it is they're teaching in their own life. So that is part of the input. So we're soaking it up. We're in the learning stage. We're in the stage of exploring ourselves, healing ourselves, and asking ourselves, does this work? Can I apply this to myself? Can I then make it into something that others can use, right? So that's the input stage. And then the output stage is testing it and practicing it and testing it, and which actually has a possibility of failure as well and included in there. especially when the output is at that end of the cycle where you're out there in the world, putting it out there, putting yourself out there, doing Facebook Lives, doing webinars, doing online talks. Pretty much everything's online. We will soon be back in person. And what will be wonderful is we'll have both options of being in person and online. And there's curiosity that supports both of these ways of being. The input creative, exploring is with curiosity about, does it work? Can I apply it? And getting the evidence of, wow, this stuff is amazing. And then there's also curiosity in the output about, well, I wonder if this is going to work for others, and who can it work for? And there's some testing that needs to happen in there. And a very dear friend of mine who supported me in my marketing earlier in my business said to me, Jackie, we never know in marketing, we never know what's going to work. We will only find out after we test it. So I had to break through that ambiguity about we don't know if it's going to work. And so that was, but the curiosity sustained that, right? And I also mentioned two different kinds of programs, if you will, in terms of putting it out there. Is one would be taking a model that someone else has created in the same fashion that works, has evidence of success, that gets results, like in my case, NLP, and teaching it. So I am teaching NLP on behalf of John Grinder, Carmen Bostic St. Clair, and Michael Carroll of the NLP Academy in England. Well, John and Carmen are in California, and Michael is in England. So I teach NLP using their model. I am a representative, if you will, and I follow as best I can their model of teaching it. So that's one way. The second way is I've created my own models. I've taken that, and I've taken my 30 years of sales, and I've taken my life as a woman and as a mother and in business and as an entrepreneur and learning marketing. Oh my gosh, all of these years I've learned so much. And I've now massaged all that, and creating workshops is one thing that I help a lot of people do. And I've created my own programs. It includes NLP, it includes all the other experiences, my corporate experience, etc. So you have two ways that you can create your products and services, right? One is, okay, so those are the two ways. And so to wrap this up, the importance of having an exit strategy and really having that fifth stage of it as a strategy is really important. Is that once you exit, it opens space to create something else. But not to get bogged down by just layering this models on top of each other. And it's really a dance between this, input and output, and being playful and being observant is going to support you. So I think that kind of wraps it up. I've kind of keeping track of my time, may have gone over a little more than I had initially thought. Thank you, Eric, for being here. Vicki, love you. Yes, self-worth is such a huge one. And thank you for sharing. Yes, it's my pleasure. I plan to be here every week, and I look forward to sharing more. I would love your feedback. Please post your comments. Please join us and share this with others. If you know any other entrepreneurs that are, in this space, then please include them. We're very much an inclusive group here. The group is the Expand Your Influence group is open for everyone to participate in. And so join us there on Facebook. And that's about it, folks. I just want to say thank you so much. I hope this has been helpful. And I just wish you a beautiful, loving, peaceful day. That's it. Thank you so much. Mwah.